Will the governments of the future be run by algorithms? And to what extent are they already being run that way? That's the question today on Jesus Now Eschatology. Welcome back. I'm Pastor Andy. I want to play for you a 2-minute clip of one of the most important podcasts released within the last month. But in this clip, they're talking about, it's Stephen Bartlett, by the way, Diary of the CEO, interviewing Yuval Noah Harari, who is one of the leading voices on AI and government. And here they're talking about a situation that's somewhat hypothetical, but quite realistic, which is what happens when the financial system of the world is no longer understood by humans, but is only understood at a complete level by algorithms. And what is the interface then for governments? Take a listen to this 2-minute clip. Very fascinating.
Whether there'll come a day in the not so distant future where we might vote for an algorithm, where we might vote for an AI to be our government. Is that crazy thinking?
I think we're quite a long way off from there. We would still want humans, at least in the symbolic role of being the prime minister, the member of parliament, whatever, the president. The real problem is that increasingly these humans could be kind of figureheads or puppets, when the real decisions, the most consequential decisions, are made by algorithms.
So he's going to actually substantiate that point here in just a minute, but he asks the question, which is, what is the role of human government other than just being symbolic at a time when everyone's looking to AI to make the decisions, which may not be so far off into the future? And then he gives slam dunk case in point for why he thinks so. Here you go.
Partly because it will just be too complicated for the humans at the top to understand the situation or to understand the different options. So going back to the financial example, so imagine that, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, there is a phone call to the prime minister from the finance algorithm telling the prime minister that we are facing a financial meltdown and that we have to do something within the next, 30 minutes to prevent a national or global financial meltdown. And there are like 3 options, and the algorithm recommends option A, and there is just not enough time to explain to the prime minister how did the algorithm reach the conclusion, and even what is the meaning of these different options. And again, people think about this scenario mostly in relation to war. Mm-hmm. That what happens if you have an algorithm in charge of your security system, and it alerts you to a massive incoming cyber attack, and you have to react immediately. And this could, if you react in a specific way, this could mean war with another nation, but you just don't have enough time to understand how the algorithm reached the decision and how the algorithm was also able to determine that of all the different options, this is the best option.
I really like this podcast. Big props to Stephen Bartlett, who runs the Diary of the CEO, and he's willing to ask some really tough questions of guests who are very much authorities in their respective fields. But this hypothetical scenario that Yuval Noah Harari presents is chillingly accurate to already what the case is. He talked a little bit more in this episode about the 2008-2009 financial collapse and how there was a financial instrument that was developed by, in his words, kind of like a bunch of kids, kind of like people developed this type of financial tool that only a handful of people understood. And because there was so few people who understood it, it wasn't properly regulated. And when that financial tool imploded and caused ripples in the economy, it actually led to a global recession in 2008, 2009. And that was a single case of there's some people who understand a financial instrument that is not understood by everyone. Therefore, it's not well regulated. Fast forward 15 years to today, and now you have AIs that even the leading developers don't fully understand how they're making the decisions that they're making, what they're considering, what the inputs and outputs are. And you have the CEOs of these companies saying basically that this is thinking at a level beyond what they're capable of understanding. You have AIs that are capable of talking to each other, and they've been shut down because these two AIs have invented their own language and they're communicating in some kind of non-human language anymore. And so there's some growing concern that like whatever these things are doing, it's not understood. So how could it be regulated? How could it be, considered as part of our world? How is this thing gonna be given these places of authority if it's not understandable to us? And so there's a couple outcomes. This podcast, they go into it at length. It's an almost 2-hour episode. But I guess my point in sharing this little clip with you is to consider carefully the world that we're heading into, which is that the governments and the authorities and the people that exist in those positions are becoming increasingly symbolic as they actually move the decision-making process over to the computers and the algorithms that understand the complex fabric of the world, and they're elevating again that authority of those systems higher and higher in terms of their power globally. And people, when they think about the dangers, he's right actually, that they often think about the AIs that could create a new virus or the AIs that could start a war. They don't often think about the financial implications of having these AIs connected to the world financial system. And so that comes with a lot of issues. But why I bring this up to you, you and I need to be both watching the world as it changes, because human intellect is being pushed out of the decision-making process globally, and the machine process is being given higher and higher rank, higher and higher position. And I guess the part of that as a theist and a Christian that concerns me is that we believe that the human soul is guided by God. And even people who are given places of authority, they're given those places of authority by God. The Bible says that the heart of a king is a water course that God directs however he wants. But when the human element is taken out of the authority and insert a computer, to what extent can I trust that this computer is being guided by God? Not a ton. And when people actually start talking about the computer as though it was God and taking all their advice from the computer instead of what God designed, which is that kings would listen to his authority, we have a very different future that we're heading towards full steam. Now, I'm just going to say this disclaimer because I feel like it's worth saying, but Yuval Noah Harari, although he hits the nail on the head in this segment about this hypothetical scenario that he probably knows a lot more about than we do in terms of his access to behind the scenes types of things, I would not necessarily recommend his worldview. He believes that all religions are basically myths, and he believes that the coming religious systems that AI will create and the coming religious texts that AIs will create is a better way of doing world religions. That's a bad idea. But even worse idea is turning over the keys to our entire fabric of, commerce to systems that people don't understand. Why that's a problem? Well, you'll have to watch this whole episode to get the full picture. But I think suffice to say, my one point of this video is watch carefully as human authorities put the AIs into higher positions and then themselves become a symbolic, almost puppet of whatever these systems recommend. Think we're not heading to some change? Change is coming, folks. But I have hope. I have hope because I know the one who holds the future, and he holds the end of time in his hand. He's already there. We're still in time, but God is beyond time, and he creates the beginning from the end. So he already knows how this all plays out, and we are just having faith in the meanwhile until Jesus returns. Take care, folks. God bless.